the chat, how do you manage workload security? And to this, I would like to go back to my slides here. So we do quite a few things in order to manage workload security. First of all, you can put your additional service on dedicated nodes, so to have a better separation between the application pods and between the additional services pods. Also, compliant Kubernetes enforces that all of the pods are not allowed to run as root, so this gives you additional security. And then furthermore, there is a Kubernetes concept called network policies, which pretty much act a bit like the security groups in the VM world. So they are applied on each pod, they're selecting pods, and then they're controlling what inbound and outbound traffic is going in and out of each pod. So for example, you could set up a network policy that says all of these RabbitMQ nodes are not allowed to talk to the outside, to the internet, and they're only allowed to be to receive connections from the application pods. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, I have a bit of noise in the background. What about, so I have sort of additional questions. Yeah. In terms of what considerations have you done? Have you looked into, for example, using or deploying service mesh along with your Kubernetes, and how will that work? As well as, do you, when it comes to securing the containers apart from the features at the KX level, right? Is it just those controls that you use for container security when it comes to things around sign-in containers or artifacts, etc.? I'm just trying to understand that level of, so I understand the at the K8 level how things are working, but when you're actually putting workloads on top of something like this, and need sort of more security, more segmentations, as well as more monitoring, especially if you're operating in a, let's say you want to take this in a sort of FS organization, building something in the cloud, where there are a lot more stringencies around security and stuff that you need to do.
So let me try to unpack your question in several questions that I heard. So first of all, with respect to container image signing, you were asking, what we allow in compliant Kubernetes is that you can configure a set of trusted container registries, and compliant Kubernetes comes with its own container registry, which also uses in the background Trivy for vulnerability scanning. And then the container registry can be configured, for example, to not allow a certain criticality of containers to run inside your workload cluster. Okay. So that's one way in which we are basically forcing all of the containers to go through a known process of vulnerability management and not allow containers to be just pulled arbitrarily off the internet. Now, you also asked about service meshes, and we are closely monitoring the ecosystem. My gut feeling is that they have certain things that are nice, like, for example, observability. They significantly increase observability, and that's why I hear mostly people asking about service meshes. When it comes to securing your workload inside the cluster, I'm not such a strong believer in service meshes. We're using Calico for network security under the hood, and it has recently added WireGuard security so as to encrypt pod-to-pod traffic with an in-kernel primitive. And in my opinion, that is that offers way more performance in order to ensure that data in-cluster communication is encrypted over an untrusted network. I do, however, hear a lot of people that they do want service meshes for observability. However, there I also feel that the ecosystem hasn't quite settled on how exactly to implement that without paying the additional performance overhead that security meshes come up with. And a pretty promising technology that is a pretty promising approach that is promoted by Cilium now is to actually use eBPF probes. So this would be low-level code that is, let's say, compiled by the kernel and runs in the kernel, but in a secure manner. And that would instead allow you to extract all the observability you need, but without paying that much overhead. So right now we're pretty much just observing this ecosystem. And once we see that this approach is more mature, we'll very likely adopt it in compliant Kubernetes. Did I answer all of your questions?
Yeah, you did.
And as I said, for segmentation, maybe I should dig deeper into that. For segmentation, Kubernetes offers network policies that Calico, the network provider, implements, and that pretty much allows you to specify which containers are allowed to talk to what other containers, and to make sure that if one container gets compromised, you pretty much cannot do anything out of there.
Yeah, I figure you were using Calico for the policies or something similar. Yeah, thank you.
And then just in case you're curious, in order to enforce the policy where we only allow certain trusted container registry to be used, we use Open Policy Agent and Gatekeeper for that.